You're listening to First Contact, Stories of the Call Center, a podcast brought to you by NobelBiz, your all-in-one contact center solution. Every month, our host, Christian Montez, talks to tech leaders and entrepreneurs who found their way into the contact center industry.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of First Contact Stories of the Call Center. We're super excited to have Brad Cleveland here on the show. And look, for those of you who don't know Brad is really known globally as one of the foremost experts in customer strategy and management. And look, as a sought-after consultant and speaker, he has worked in over 45 states, 60 countries, and he's included in companies like Apple, American Express, USAA, University of California, and many, many others. He's even advised governments, United States, Australia, Canada, so on and so forth. So we're super excited to have him here. And look, for those of you who haven't read Brad's book, he is the author of Leading the Customer Experience, How to Chart a Course and Deliver Outstanding Results. And I think I can also say, Brad, one of the other things is your mission is to help organizations understand and thrive in the new era of customer experience. So with that said, Brad, welcome to the show. Excited to have you here.
Thank you, Christian. I'm blushing just a little bit after that intro. Thank you. Honor to be with you.
Well, look, I think when we talk about stories, right, and stories are really what allow us to be able to communicate with people. We always want to know, how did you get into the customer experience journey space, the contact center space? Love to have our audience know, what's your story?
So I had a perfect plan that I developed in college, and then I just went out and implemented. And if you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you, I think the saying goes. I walked through doors, and I didn't know where they were leading at the time. But one of my first jobs, just a quick story, is I ran cable for a company that provided business systems, so telecom and computer systems. And I spent a lot of my time underneath corporate buildings, hospitals. It was hard work. This is underground, under these floors, flashlight on my head. I had some very salty supervisors who would tell me in no uncertain terms if I didn't do something right. But what they were saying is, hey, your work matters. You're becoming a part of this wired, connected world that we're wireless today, right? This connected world we're a part of. And something really got a hold of me. I love that idea. I worked in and around different contact centers and met a person by the name of Gordon McPherson Jr. at a consulting conference. And we struck up a friendship, co-authored some articles together. I ended up becoming partners with him in the International Customer Management Institute. This was over 30 years ago now. I'm dating myself a bit, but we had a chance to work together for about 5 years. Then he retired in the mid 90s, and just an incredible opportunity to learn from a true pioneer. I mean, Gordon set up some of the first contact centers in the world. He was working with organizations around the world, and I just got on that on-ramp, and with his help, had the opportunity to go into these, incredible organizations and work with their teams, and just, it was learning by fire hose, but it was just a tremendous opportunity. So, and I think the thing that really, after he retired, really opened doors is I wrote a book called Call Center Management on Fast Forward. And we've kept it up to this day. It's in its 4th edition now. It's now Contact Center Management on Fast Forward. But we released that to the world in the mid 90s. I think it was 97. And that first edition opened doors beyond my wildest expectations. So yeah, just kind of, what do you have to do in the next 3 hours? Do a good job with that. And that's kind of been my approach.
It's interesting that when I find businesses that have gone the entrepreneurial route and found to be self-employed or running their own company, there's always a story behind your first big client, or that first client that kind of gave you that confidence to say, like, I can do this, or, oh, wow, it's happening, right? Do you have any piece of that you could share of what that journey looked like for you?
Yeah, there were a few, and without mentioning specific company names, they were um, over engineering their contact centers. So I went in as a consultant. I'm in my 20s at the time, and do I have anything to share and provide here? And it didn't take a whole lot of deep analysis to see, they had way too many agent groups set up. They were trying to handle, they were dividing things out even back in the day by channels too granularly, and so simplification has been a theme for 3 decades now. It's very easy for the contact center to get messy and just way too. We add things, we add metrics, we add agent groups. We don't go back and simplify and consolidate at the same level in many cases. So I had a few of those initial clients where we simplified their agent groups, we cleaned up their metrics a bit, and things got better. I mean, like really quickly they got better, and that was exciting. It gave me a huge boost of confidence, and it wasn't anything I came up with. It was just kind of some common sense. Hey, let's structure this in a good way.
Well, it's interesting because we hear a theme, especially even in these last few seasons, is going back to the basics, right? Going back to why you're doing something. And it's interesting that you state that there wasn't something you invented per se, but you kind of went in and said, "Hey, from the outsider looking in, this is overly complex," and that allowed you to see that going forward there was an opportunity. So now, obviously, you have a global consulting firm. Talk to us a little bit about that. What is it that you are really focused on today? What is it that companies come to you for? Give us some insight into that.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. Kind of the mainstay is consulting. So, and I'm completely independent. You won't find as much as a coffee mug from a supplier. That's been my calling card since day one. That I am completely independent. I'm completely focused on the end user. So consulting is something that has been really the anchor over all these years. And I'll work with organizations, and I just take a handful every year. I'll work with organizations that really want to change. They want to do a great job. They want to do what they need to do to really reach their customers and serve them well, and to create a great environment for their employees. So that part's got to be a fit. But that's always been a lot of fun. And I've had a chance to work with small startups and some large national governments and multinational companies. And the underlying principles are the same, regardless of the industry and regardless of the size. There's some things that play out differently, of course, but the underlying principle is the same. So, consulting, you do a lot of keynote speaking, seminars and workshops is a third area of focus. LinkedIn learning courses. That's been a lot of fun. So, LinkedIn Learning reached out a handful of years ago and asked if I do a course on contact center management and then customer service leadership. And we've got, I think 14 courses, 12 or 14 courses out there now on different aspects of customer experience and customer service. A couple of them are contact center specific. So that's been a lot of fun, just a great organization. And I'm an advisor to ICMI, the organization that I had the privilege to lead a CEO for many years, and they've continued to roll out the red carpet. And it's just a great team they have, and it's been a lot of fun to continue to advise them. I'm honored to be asked to do so.
Yeah, it's interesting how you've had different avenues to communicate with the world and audiences around, right? Some of it's in person, some of it's through LinkedIn specifically, others through seminars and otherwise. And so it almost, in your own way, you're finding how to make it easy for people to absorb and learn from you. And then vice versa, I'm sure you're learning a lot from all the people you work with. So, with that in mind, after all these years, has there been anything that's really stuck with you and guided you throughout your journey, even to it's true today?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're right. I learn every engagement. I'm learning. It really is a two-way street, and it's fun to see new angles and see how things are applied in different kinds of environments. That's where the real challenge is, right? How do we apply this stuff? And seeing so many great leaders across this space, and how they're navigating the challenges of the last few years. I think the one to the question, one thing that's really stood out is value opportunity in these services. And I always think of three levels of value, not to get too, left brain about all this, but there's efficiency, there's customer loyalty, and there's strategic value. Like, what are we learning as we engage with customers that can help us improve products and services and processes? And that's where the contact center can become a feed to a strategic source for customer experience. How are we improving services and products across the board based on what we're learning in the contact center? So that's been a theme for 3 decades, and the labels change and the emphasis can change over time, but that's been a constant.
It's really neat that you broke it out that way, and the way that you structured it is saying, left brain. I think what's really great is conversation and that real human aspect, but also tangible outcomes, tangible takeaways, and being able to associate them to the so what, right? What do we
Yeah.
do now? What's the outcome, and how do we achieve that? And so you had a great discussion. I think it was a TED talk you were doing where you were talking about leveraging the always on environment. And you were talking about these three distinct things. And I'd love to kind of just dive in a little bit into that. Can you kind of just for the audience, give us that high level piece of what you meant by how people and companies can leverage an always on environment?
Yeah. And I'll have to remember that talk myself, but the idea is that there's so much coming at us, and the talk was really for individuals, how in our personal worlds or businesses, really either one, but it wasn't contact center related so much. How do we manage this deluge of information coming at us, all the channels, all the social media platforms we can all get entangled in? How do you manage that? And we have to be intentional. We have to know where we're going. As a family, as a person, we've got to know what's important and make sure we're focusing on the right thing. So that was really the gist of that talk. And it was a lot of fun to put together. And it was one of those speaking to myself talks. Like we've got to be intentional today. You can't react. If you do, it just doesn't work. And I don't care if you're premier or president of a country, or if you're a teenager trying to grapple with everything coming at you. You gotta know where you're going and gotta dial in your values.
Yeah, it's great to use the term focus, right? Because you were talking about how focus was a choice, right? And I find that a lot of businesses will just move to the shiny objects. You were talking about earlier about, implementing all these work groups and silos and just the next thing. And a lot of times when we look at that, step back and we look at the customer journey, right? It's not a bunch of silos, right? It's a intentional reason to get you from one thing to the next to the next. And if you don't, then there's friction, there's challenges. And it was interesting. You kind of gave a breakdown of, you getting your flight license, I think it was, and all these distractions that were happening. But then you had to focus on one in particular thing. You had to make the decision to focus on that. Have you seen that companies have challenges with focusing on something, making that decision to focus? Are they fragmented? What have you seen, or do you advise when you see people, leaders or otherwise, not focusing and they're just doing a lot of everything?
Yeah, and boy, that's such a great question. And there's no bad guy in these efforts. There's just we run into things like I was in an organization a while back that had 3 different voice of the customer programs. Like, do you guys have a voice of the customer program? Like, yeah, I think we got 3. One in marketing, they're listening. One in IT, and one in the customer service area. That's too many. We need one, and we need a cross-functional team to really dial in that one unified overall effort. So focus is huge. And there are a lot of shiny objects out there. And we talk about the developments and capabilities in technology and what this company's doing with their processes, or what that company's doing with their culture, or whatever. You can get pulled in all these different directions. You've got to start with, where do you want to go as an organization? How are you going to make a dent in the world? How can you be uniquely you, and then align everybody around that, and everything you're doing? And it's easier to say than do, but it is a leadership responsibility. And when we do, when we really have that focus, it's so powerful.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Earlier, you stated the term simplifying, or being, to simplify something. And I find that when in the journey to try to provide something better and different, sometimes we miss the things that are right in front of us. There's sometimes a simple answer and we make them overly complex. And I don't know why that is, to be honest, right? But when we sit back and we go, oh, well, that's all it was, or that was simple, right? It almost takes us from surprise. And we're just, why did that happen that way? Have you seen when it comes to simplifying, why is it so challenging for businesses and people to just simplify stuff? I mean, I'm not saying you have a magic wand to solve that, but do you see any common themes of why that is?
Well, I feel the answer largely goes back to having everybody involved in innovation. So I'm smiling when you talk about simplifying. There's a story of two space programs in two different countries that had the same challenge. Pens don't write upside down. So in zero gravity, they were finding they couldn't use the pens. So one program spent millions of dollars and developed a pen that can write in zero gravity. Took months, millions of dollars, boom, they got there. The pen works. The other program switched to pencils.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Right? And so back to innovation, we need everybody's insight. We used to have you think of labs and folks in coats, lab coats coming up with innovative new ideas, and we need a team to help corral and manage and implement the ideas. But everybody, the most innovative companies have a culture where everybody's a part of innovation. Someone might come up with a pencil idea that nobody else thought of. So, and your newest employees, and I see this in contact centers all the time. I'll hear managers and leaders say, but between you and me and the gatepost, I'm a little nervous. I don't understand the technology real well. And they brought me in because I had some wins in other areas, but I mean, there's so much to understand here and learn. I'm like, perfect. You've got the perfect perspective. What's going to simplify and create a better environment for your customers? What's going to simplify and create a better environment for your employees? Ask the basic questions. So, and build a culture where your newest employees, the person who's brand new to the work world, let alone contact centers, can ask those basic questions. I was sitting with someone the other day. They're like, if we could take the information from this screen and populate these fields, it'd be so much easier. Is there a tool that can do? Well, I bet there is. I bet you've got some tools that could automatically do that for you, and you're seeing that. Everybody else has just been in it for so long. No one's thinking of that. And I hear that sort of theme all the time. So 100% innovation with a focus on how do we make things easier and simpler.
Yeah, and it was interesting that you said around, the person with the outsider's perspective, but not outsider in the sense of, not just the contact center, but maybe just the fact that they're new. When you're learning, right? You go in and something's new to you and you go in and learn. Some of it's intuitive, some of it you got to really create that muscle memory and build that up. But it's funny how you state where you get someone's perspective from the outside who's not entrenched in the details and they've already been kind of overwhelmed with the reality of they know too much. And that's why it's hard to see to the other end how to make it easy. And someone will come in and they say, well, why don't you just do this, like the pencil thing, right?
Right.
And they just go, oh, well, I guess we can shift to that. And I think that's really important. And, change is never easy. And obviously, when we talk about the fast evolving adoption of technology, the customer experience changing because the customer's demanding something different, how they want to be met, where, and how. What are you seeing from the business, right? When you're doing the training, the videos, and you're talking to people in person and so on and so forth, what are you seeing as resonating with being able to say, okay, here's how the people you work with learn best over time? Meaning you started, I'm sure you had some form of teaching and educating. Did it work and you've always just kind of done that and it's been great? Or did you evolve over time and say, hey, I got to meet my customer differently because they're not getting it or they're not getting it as well as I'd like to? Any insight into the training and education aspect of it?
Yeah, well, I probably bumbled along more than have been as intentional as I could, but I have tried to listen, and different organizations have said we need. Yeah, the book "Leaving the Customer Experience" covers 10 pillars of customer experience, and some organizations want a 4-hour, half day version of that. Others want their teams to read the book, and they have lunch and learns where they explore different topics as they go along. Others want the 1 hour, less than 1 hour LinkedIn version. So I've kind of seen how they've used this. I had one organization, like American Express back in the day, that they did a 45 site workshop where we got everybody together, all the entire leadership team in their customer service area, and went through some principles of planning and customer access strategy and all that. That was right for them. They wanted everybody in one place at one time. For some of them, it was middle of the night. But they wanted that opportunity to have that common platform and everybody to hear the same thing. Most will have recordings or do that in a different sessions over time. It really depends on what's best for your team. What's your workload? How do they like to learn? I think multiple channels, just like we say with contact center channels for our customers, give them choices and how they can consume the information you want them to have.
This is James. James is a contact center manager with a passion for philosophy and hiking. As a kid, he made a promise to himself that he would always follow his passion. Today, he ponders on the thought that this promise is probably the best decision he ever made. Today, James loves his job just as much as he loves hiking. So much that he sometimes brings the scent of fresh pine and the tranquility of the mountain streams back to the office with him. With NobelBiz as his company's provider, James found the necessary peace of mind to finally bridge the gap between his passion and his work. By choosing to partner with the promise-keeping voice and software provider of the industry, contact center technical issues, downtime, and poor customer experience are now a thing of the past. In an industry ruled by uncertainty, NobelBiz combines balanced pricing with the highest quality, topped off with outstanding support. But above all, NobelBiz delivers peace of mind to contact center managers and owners. And for the first time, James hit that sweet spot of focus and confidence that is allowing him to take his business to new heights of profitability and success. After all, you know what they say, promises are the uniquely human way of ordering the future. NobelBiz, the promise keepers of the industry.
It's great that we got to that piece of knowing your customer. Because what you've done is over time, you've realized that there's not one size fits all. It's not just convenient for you, Brad. I'm going to go out and I'm just going to do one book and that's going to solve everyone's problem, right? Is you realized very quickly that there are going to be businesses that require something different for their needs. And you found several different approaches to how do you meet them, where they need to be met, and how they want to ingest that. And I think that translates very well into the contact center space, because it's not just, hey, I only want to offer chat and that's the only way you're going to do business with me. Well, sure, if you have only people that want to engage with you via chat, then that makes sense. So let's kind of shift a little bit over to things that we find really important in organizations and that we talk about a lot, right? These big buzzwords around mission and vision and values. Do you feel that either one of those or any one of those are more important than the other? And if so, what is it? Otherwise, what is the impact to a business that maybe doesn't have a defined mission, vision, or values?
I used to give less attention to and really lend less importance to mission and vision than I do now. It is so important, and I've seen better visions, better missions really help turn ships where they had teams going off in different directions. So mission and vision are so important. And I look for three things. Are they focused on the customer? Do they uniquely describe what we do to meet them where they need to be met, and what's the outcome. So REI's got a vision. I don't have it in front of me. I'm going to get it a little bit wrong, but we want to inspire, educate, and outfit our customers to enjoy a lifetime of outdoor adventure and stewardship. I think that's pretty close to their vision. That's
Sounds
pretty,
about right.
yeah, that's pretty cool, right? I mean, I can be a new employee, and I've got a pretty good idea that we inspire, educate, and outfit. Why? To enable our customers to enjoy a lifetime of outdoor adventure and stewardship. So that can align a lot of decisions and initiatives in the organization. Just one more to mention: Services Australia, the federal government in Australia. They used to have a mission around, we want to deliver world-class services, something like that. No one understood it. No one knew what that meant. Their vision now is that we want to create a simplified experience so that our constituents, our customers, can get on with their lives. Love that. Make it simple and easy for them so they can get on with their lives. They have to engage with us. We're government, so we have to be there for some for some key services, but let's make it easy on them. And it's really helped focus everything from individual coaching sessions to larger technology initiatives like authentication efforts, where let's voice biometrics. A customer's voice print can get them right into the system and pull up information and route the contact if necessary. So vision's super important. And I've learned that over the years. Again, don't make the mistake I did in my early years and just not, oh yeah, it's kind of fluffy vision. Let's get on to things that, are crunchier. No, it's super important, and it lends that direction to the crunchy things we need to do to support it.
Yeah, I love that because for a long time, right, vision was almost this like page on your website. It was this like footnote piece at the beginning of a document or something. But it really, even just for our company, we look at it and we're made up of people, right? And people have to have a purpose or a reason to do something. If you want to start to tap into them engaging more, doing more versus less. And when you look at that and you see that people are empowered to be able to do more, or they're embracing the mission and the vision of the company, I think it translates into a better outcome for the business and for the end customer, whether it's a product or service that you deliver. And especially when we talk about the contact center space, right, is even in the world of self-service and AI and everything, there's still these complex conversations. There's still a point in which at some point a human interaction has to happen. And when that person is able to embrace and understand where their role is in making that vision real, I think it's going to really turn the ship for a lot of companies and allows them to not just have it as a little thing that is a side note. So it's great to hear.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I would, Christian, throw in one more thought too. If someone's sitting there and thinking, well, our company vision isn't that great, or it's just kind of up here, and how do we apply it? It's fine to have a vision and mission for your team, and even for you as an individual. Like I'll go into organizations, and a team leader getting exceptional results, I'll ask, what are they doing differently? Oh yeah, that's Amy's team. Amy's got the A team, or the special ops, and they've got this camaraderie around what their part of the vision and mission is. So you'll hear folks warn against having multiple visions and missions, and certainly we don't want them to be different in how they play out. But it's fine to have a supporting mission and vision. I do individually, like going into a workshop or a keynote or something like that. For years, I'd get nervous, and that's all healthy and probably just a part of the freight. But is this going to go like I want it to go? Are they going to get out of it what they need to get out of it? And it just hit me one day. Don't worry about all that. You are here to serve. And I actually wrote it down. I got this scrap piece of hotel card stock that I wrote this down on. I've carried it around since then. I look at it. You are here to serve. All this great stuff about customer experience and enabling organizations to thrive. All that's great, and I've got to work on that every day. But that morning, in front of that group, I'm there to serve. If I focus on that, it all rolls up to something that hopefully is helpful.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that you simplified it to something very core to what you're trying to do for others, right? And then that translates into the other things, right? If you're trying to help with customer experience or retention or whatever it may be, are you serving right now? Are you there to serve? And like for us, ours is promise keeping, right? So every time we
I
come
love
back,
that.
say, are we being promise keepers, right? And that can extend to other things as well, which is not just make a promise, keep a promise, is part of being an expert in X or Y basically means, are you educating yourself? Are you always being a student? Are you always trying to make sure that that thing that you want to give out into the world, that you are keeping up with it, that you are providing things that are relevant to people? So it's great to see that you have something that resonates really deeply with the way we approach stuff. And so it's great to see that you've been so successful in that. Now,
Promise keeping's great. Love that.
yeah, I mean, Steve Biederman, our president, brought that to our company, and so we've been very fortunate to have embraced something that's so impactful. And it's always good to see when leaders come in, whether they're the head of the company or otherwise. Even the groups like you're talking about, where they have the A team, where they take it upon themselves to say, this is what's going to take us to that next level. And then you have groups around them that just surround them and say, let's do it, and they buy in, and you can see great things happen. With that said, of course, though, one of the things that I've seen is this idea that's been brought up around the new era of customer experience, right? How are you seeing exactly how companies are adapting to this concept?
Great question. So everything has been put on fast forward, and it's on the heels in the last couple of years. It's on the heels of these incredible technology disruptions that have come along. The web browser brought the internet to everybody and our businesses. The way we do things in the 90s and by the year 2000, we're all using it. We changed the game, and smartphones come along in 2007 and 8. By 2010, we're all carrying those devices around in our pockets and purses. And more recently, the cloud and AI and just machine learning, all these tools are incredible disruptions, but together they got accelerated by COVID. I remember talking to the senior VP of an insurance company in February of 2020, which seems like an eternity ago now. But I was supposed to fly out and do a workshop for their team in person. And he's like, Brad, we've got these aggressive plans to move 30% of our workforce to maybe it's 20% to home over the next couple of years. Maybe it's 3 years, something like that. We're going to get there. And it's aggressive, but we're going to get there. And COVID tumbled the world, and I caught up with him in April. We ended up doing the session virtually, but I'm like, how'd that plan go? He's like, yeah, make that 100% in 2 weeks flat. It was a heavy lift, but my goodness, we did it. And the exhaustion level is high, but the confidence level is really high right now. Like I'm hearing in a lot of different executive boardrooms, we got through these last few years. What's next now? We've got some baling wire and chewing gum holding things together. What do we need to do to get there? So there's a lot of focus on customer access strategy, which sounds like consultants speak, but they're the 10 components are, we write about them in the book and write about them in Contact Center Management and Fast Forward as well. That book, they're so essential. So who are our customers? What issues would come up in their world? What channels would make sense for them? In what kind of environment? What kind of engagement? You just go through these 10. It takes some work, but then you've got a plan that makes sense. So the principles of the new era of customer experience aren't dramatically different from the past. They just really are on fast forward, and we really do need to roll up our sleeves and do the hard yards to make sure we're ready for it and creating experiences that work for them.
What's so true of what you said is you even simplified the idea of the approach to adopting this change that is demanding of you, right? Whether it was COVID and it was in 2 weeks, or whether it's the technology has changed in a way where now people can get information faster, they're more informed, their expectations of timeliness and responses that much more strict. And so you've gone back and you said, okay, here are the 10 things, but you've even said simpler than that is you got to stop for a minute and you have to document what you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to achieve it. Because then otherwise, all the other stuff is just noise and effort and time and people that if not done right, it's wasted, or worse, it's wasted and you create a bad experience for people. You upset them and you end up creating this friction that you didn't have to in the first place, which translates into now, right? We're talking about this idea of personalization, right? Everybody is unique, but everybody does have some overarching themes of what they want from something, right? They want something maybe fast, they want it well built, they want quality. When they have an issue, that they can get it resolved and someone's knowledgeable. You can go down things that are probably pretty uniform, but then in the end, it's like, but me, I want to be unique in the fact that I want these things this way. And some companies have this broad brush, right? Saying, well, everybody who goes through the phone gets treated this way, everyone through chat this way, and so on and so forth. And so as we get to personalization in that customer experience, I understand that there may be even 3 levels around personalization and how it can be executed. Can you give some insight into that approach and that dynamic?
Yeah, so personalization really needs to come from our customer access strategy, who are and to get away from the broad brushstrokes you just described, which are, we know they're not going to work for everybody. So who are our customers, and get as granular as you need to about who they are and what their needs would be. And then if you've got, if you really focus on intake in a contact center, like authentication, identifying who that customer is, the sky's the limit. So just to use a simple example, I fly a couple of airlines a lot. They both answer me by, it's a system, answer me by name. One is Brad and the other is Bradley. Bradley makes me feel like I'm in trouble, but so I like Brad a little better. But it's pretty cool. They can pull up, my information, my itineraries, get me to a person that would, an agent group that would make sense, offer channels that would make sense, self-service options. If we know who the customer is, we can be as proactive as we need to about next steps. So there's that, and there's just, there's different levels and different ways to define how to personalize, but it should all flow from the customer access strategy. Who are our customers and what needs do they have? It's not in rocket science, to use the cliche. If we know if a customer were to walk in, just you were to walk into my organization right now, hey, how's it going, Christian? That would lead us to something that makes sense. If a customer were to walk into your organization right now, and they need to file a claim, they need information on something that's broken, they're confused on a self-service option, they want to buy something, how would you treat them? That's customer access, and that lends itself to personalization and how we would listen to the voice of the customer and everything else that falls under that.
I love the fact that you said Brad versus Bradley, and you're like, Bradley, I feel like I got in trouble. Brad feels like I know the person, and so on and so forth. And I'm starting to see certain brands that I interact with. When you complete your profile, there's a preferred name section,
Yeah.
right? And for them to actually translate the preferred name, assuming it gets filled out, right, in the right way, I think can accomplish a lot of what you're talking about, is that you create that more familiar interaction, and it diffuses it a little bit where it's like, hey, I'm a friend, I'm here to help. Let's see what we can do together. Let's engage. Versus, if it's overly formal, and I'm not saying there's times when you shouldn't be formal, but if you know your customer, that kind of leads to that other pieces. What does it mean to know your customer, right? Companies will say, well, knowing my customer knows I know this, their age, their name, their address, I need these very transactional things. But then you take it a step further and say, knowing my customer may be how often they buy, what they buy, whether they return things, how do they engage with me? Do they engage in happy things via social media and upset things via a phone call? What is it that they do, and what does that journey look like? And being able to do it from cradle to grave, or obviously, hopefully not grave, if they're, reoccurring revenue or some other lifetime value attribute you want to get to someone that wants to keep buying from you. Being able to go in there and see what it is that the changes you've made, if it actually impacts that journey for them, and if you really are making it personal. So asking your customers probably pretty darn important. It sounds like you've done a lot about that. Any
Well,
thoughts
how you just describe that is perfect. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in all the variables you just mentioned, and how we really would best understand our customers beyond the transactional information. So yeah, very much what you just described, and it's fun to do that. How do we get to know our customers better? This is a fun part of customer service, because it really does learn to prepare us to serve them where they need to be served, and to connect as we can.
Well, I think then that becomes really the basis of the old thought of a contact center is really a cost center. It's just a cost of doing business. But then when you can leverage everything you've just stated that you put in your books and you educate people on, then you can stop looking at it as a cost center and start looking at it as, any other thing that improves revenue, increases customer satisfaction, everything from lifetime value and so on and so forth. Because then in the end, when you look at it from that perspective, it is fun. It is fun. It's not just this checkbox. It's like, yep, I've filled out the thing and I know my customer. It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah,
Because
right.
then you wouldn't have all the things that maybe people say are improvements or complaints, unfortunately, if you have, issues with that. Um, One of the things that I wanted to talk about is, the idea of closed loop feedback, right? And I know we've, in the past and other conversations elsewhere, we've talked about how, educating people and having information about why people engage with you, give you information, or even complete surveys is going to help with, let's say, getting improved responses and response rates and things of that nature. What are your thoughts on that concept, that idea, but also just the idea of getting improvements in that closed loop feedback?
Yeah, interesting you ask. I was just having a conversation the other day with uh, one of the producers at LinkedIn, and we're looking at the course. We've got a course out there, managing customer feedback, and it's this process and approach, and how is it changing? And we did a review of the course. Has been out there for a while, and it's not. The principles aren't. We need to cast a wide net of listening. Surveys is one important aspect of listening, but certainly not the only. And customers are so over surveyed. We've got to use the
Yeah.
full breadth of options we've got to listen. So operational data, certainly hearing from our employees. You can traditional things like focus groups, social media, product and service reviews, what employees are saying about us. All of that really creates a powerful set of really it's input and a set of data that we can bring to life and make it meaningful if we tag it and use it. So, and closed loop is an important part of that, not just for customers, but employees who are offering innovation ideas, and they're giving their feedback. So anywhere we can circle back and not only act on what we're getting, but show that we're using that information is a very powerful part of that whole process.
Oh, that's huge. Don't you hate it when you get surveys and it feels like they never even listen to one thing you said?
And like, I'm going
What
to fill out the next one after
Yeah,
feeling that
what's
way,
the
right?
point? Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and and I think you're right. Surveys are overused, but I think a lot of times people don't really know what they're used for, what the outcome is, that anything was ever done as a byproduct of it. And I think that's where it becomes a challenge is people's time, which is a finite resource. They're not going to spend it on something if they don't know what's in it for them, why they're going to do it. Um, with that said, I know we have, a lot of trends we're starting to see. When we look at 2023, what trends do you think, whether it's operational, customer experience, technology, are you seeing some big things that you're excited for, or just saying, wow, this is something to look out for?
Yeah, so my answer is a little different than the answers I hear coming from others. Not that it's any more correct, maybe just rounds things out. But if you ask that question of a lot of industry pundits right now, you hear things around conversational AI and machine learning and omni-channel and all that. I feel like those are supporting aspects of some trends that are even more important. And one is really getting to the value of the contact center. Where are we going to use AI? Where are we going to focus our training efforts? Where are we going to roll out and maintain this or that channel? Or with some organizations, reduce focus on some channels and to really emphasize others. All those questions are supporting to what's the value of the contact center. And so that's a trend I'm seeing, like just in these discussions in boardrooms and workshops, like, hey, hold the phones for a moment and let's talk about why we're doing all this. And that's a trend that's, to me, very exciting, because that's going to set the right tone and give the right guidance. Back to that discussion on vision and values, it's going to help set the right direction for everything. So that's a trend I'm seeing. A supporting trend is work around the customer access strategy. Who are our customers? What needs do they have? What channels do we roll out? What hours of operation? What agent groups and level of technical proficiency and experience and all of that are we enabling them to reach around their needs and expectations? Just a lot of roll up the sleeves work around the customer access strategy. And again, that then lends direction to decisions we're making around the tools and technologies and all that. Certainly some really innovative things happening in those areas, and those are important answers in all this, but get the big stuff right, and those things tend to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I mean, all of them in some sense or another are tools, right? But to use the right tool in the right way, you also have to know what you're trying to build and why you're trying to build it, and so on and so forth. And so I think that leads back to our discussions earlier around, slowing down, make it simple, which is first, why am I doing this, right? Before I just start spending money and hours. But, you can't really manage easily things that you can't measure. And you've had a LinkedIn, course on metrics for service operations. What do you think are some of the most essential things a company really needs to focus on when it does come to metrics, when you get to that point?
Yeah, wow. Metrics are a fun conversation. In a lot of organizations, if you were to print out what they're measuring and following, you could cover a small parking lot. They're just trying to look at too much. So the theme with metrics is the theme with so many things. You'll simplify and make sure you're focusing on the right things. There are 7, and they're on my website. I'll go through them really quickly here for our time's purpose, but we encourage you to explore them more deeply. And they're foundational to more strategic. So forecast is one, and people look at me sideways when I mentioned forecasting as a metric and as one of 7 metrics. Are you kidding? That sounds so operational. Hey, you try to manage an environment where you don't know what's coming through the door. What's coming through the door, metaphorically speaking. We've got to have a good forecast. We've got to have a schedule fit to it. We've got to have resources that match. So workload, resources to meet it. A third out of 7 then is service level. Service level and response time. Our customers getting to where they need to go. And some will point out, well, that's not near as important as quality. Yeah, that's apples to oranges though. Quality can't happen unless they get somewhere, unless they reach the resource they need. So service level and response time. Quality's 4th up the list. Again, we're getting higher level, more strategic. A 5th would be employee engagement, such a leading indicator, so important. It's not going to happen if we don't have those foundational things in place. It's a mess that no one wants to be part of. Customer engagement and loyalty would be 6, and strategic value. What are we learning that can help us improve products and services as an organization? So very quick tour of the 7 that we like to underscore and emphasize and look for in organizations. And if there are gaps, they're generally huge opportunities.
Yeah, now obviously anybody who wants to know more about that, they can engage with you. They can learn more from your services and books and everything else. But for the time we have today, I mean, it's great that we were able to go through those 7, and each of them could be a whole conversation into themselves. But with that being the basis of what people are doing, and let's say they adopt those things, what are you finding now and going forward are just going to be the biggest challenges or the biggest challenge that contact centers are dealing with at the moment?
Well, right now it's what I call blocking and tackling. It's getting the right resources in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And you'll hear, the great resignation and quiet quitting, which is the silliest term we've ever come up with. But there's a lot of challenge right now just around getting the right resources in place at the right time. I'm not seeing the Great Resignation and certainly disengagement, if that's what we mean by quiet quit. I'm not seeing that play out the same in different organizations. I'm seeing some just have a heyday right now and attracting the kind of talent they need because they've got empowered environments. And back, you mentioned the word purpose. That is the number one issue for any of us in our work worlds. Do we have a purpose? Do we know we're making a difference? Some organizations are not choosing to participate in the Great Resignation. And there's no finger pointing in this. If you're listening and you've got a challenge with turnover and that sort of thing, you're not alone. And it's an opportunity for us, though. So that's a challenge right now. And I think the other challenge is just in a contact center environment around this whole buzz term omni-channel. We've got a lot of ways for customers to reach us. How do we put that all together and make it elegant and simple and intuitive for them?
It's funny that you mentioned omni-channel because I was just going to bring up that topic. We had slightly discussed the concept of it earlier, but we've been talking about omni-channel forever. It's nothing new, right? But have you seen companies during the pandemic going forward when the rules were broken, right? You were just like, I don't have a choice. I have to change. Did you see businesses finally start to adopt it differently or better than they did in the past? Or do you think it's still just a continuation of some do it okay, some do it well, some not at all? What are you seeing when it comes to from the pandemic's perspective to now going forward around companies actually what we'll call implementing and using a real omni-channel experience?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's been some learnings that haven't entirely translated yet to customers yet and what they experience, but COVID forced a lot of organizations to adapt very quickly, and many threw self-service options in place. And if we can offload 10% of our workload through these chat applications, that'd be great. What it did though was force them to have an exit out of those self-service capabilities. We're gonna cause incredible frustration if customers can't move beyond that and reach the resources they need. So I think that whole experience taught a lot of managers and leaders in contact centers that we've got to think not in terms of channels, but in terms of how they work together, in terms of that journey through channels. We're not there yet in many contact centers. There's work to be done, but I'm excited about the improvements that I'm seeing. And again, this sounds like a broken record, but start with your customer access strategy and think in terms of a customer's progression through what they might need. They start out in search or your website or an app, and what happens beyond that, what channels are involved, what information do you pull up, what channels would work side by side, maybe video, sharing a screen, what does that look like ideally? And that's leading us to more robust, what we can truly consider omni-channel environments.
Yeah, I think you're spot on when you talk about how each of these channels, they're treated as like individual moments in time, silos, even teams of who's working with the customer in that moment. And there's not this stop to look at how is the use of all these things as part of a holistic journey, right? Whether it's a transaction or the overall experience of an ongoing relationship, how does it actually support the customer feeling that this is easy, this is simple, this is less friction, this is better versus, well, this is better for my cost, or this is better for my staffing, or this is better for my work groups and my management approach, or whatever that may be. But when it comes to the pandemic back, let's flip it to the other side. Has the customer experience from a behavior, has the customer's behavior changed since the pandemic, or even their expectations, or is it still kind of just been a blip on the radar and it'll go back to the way it was before?
I think we're going to see some changes that will have taken hold that aren't, we're never going back. There was a lot of margin for a while in customer expectations, that 8-hour waits to get through to your airline, for example. And through 2021, that wasn't uncommon with mainline carriers. And Yeah, it's busy. It's a weird time. We got some grace from customers. I think now we're not only beyond that, but customers are experiencing a wide range of experiences with different organizations, and they're kind of getting through their their thought process, the idea that we can do things differently. There are real decisions we're making behind the scenes that impact them, and I think they're going to reward and are the organizations that treat them well. We're beyond the last few years. We need to move on. So it's time to get service levels where they need to be. It's time to create those omni-channel experiences that really work for customers. So I think the expectations are going to go up, but I think there's going to be an even greater sort of awareness on the customer side that these are intentional decisions we're making. So they go not just, oh, that was a great experience or that was not a great experience. They're going to have some ideas about our brand and our values based on how we're treating them. And maybe that's always been the case, but it certainly is now.
So great conversation, a lot of great content. Obviously, we're at the end of our slot. I want to just finish off with a couple personal pieces, right? From your perspective, it sounds like, the end of the year for 2022, going into 2023, moving forward. Any plans, any personal things from you that you've learned that you just said, this has impacted my personal life, being able to say like, hey, this is how I take it forward as a learning opportunity or learning moment?
Oh yeah. That's a fun question. I appreciate it. I'd start with that century-old, wise counsel that, Lord willing, we'll do this or that, this year. None of us know exactly what tomorrow holds, but we've got the gift of today, and I've got trips to Dubai and Spain in the works. Some exciting, conferences there. There's a couple more LinkedIn courses and one on contact center leadership. I've got one on customer experience and customer service leadership. This is even more granular. LinkedIn Learning reached out and we recorded it recently, and it takes a few months to get everything in place then and launch it, but that'll be available in first quarter of 2023. So I'm really excited about that course. And some ICMI conferences and events that are on the docket, and I've got an update of contact center management on Fast Forward, which is it's in its fourth edition. The fifth edition we're looking at 2024 for, which is not so far down the road. It's an appalling idea, but wow, time is moving. So all of that goes back to that little scrap of paper. You're here to serve, and what does that mean for me this morning? I just have to remind myself that you've got today, and do what you can to be helpful.
So with that in mind, how do you find a work-life balance? What do you do to disconnect, to de-stress, something when you're not serving others, but you're serving yourself?
I love flying. You mentioned that. I don't get out a whole lot these days. I'm generally a passenger with others, but I love the aviation in general, and that's fun. I just taking walks with Kirsten. We've been married for 34 years now. She's my number one go-to as a confidant, mentor, and wise counsel, and just taking walks, taking a run, just reading by the fire. It all sounds pretty simple.
Well, stopping and doing it, making time for yourself is the hard part. It's not the fact that there are things you enjoy, and it's great to hear that you got some of those. So look, there's going to be people that want to get a hold of you. They want to understand how to connect with you. How best can they connect with you and your business?
Yeah. So any way that you would like, bradcleveland.com is the website. And you go to the contacts page, there's, LinkedIn, my email's there, just however you'd want to reach me. I'd love to hear from anyone who would like to reach out and make a connection.
Perfect. Well, that's been a great conversation, great time. Hopefully the audience, you've loved it. This is the finish of this episode for First Contact Stories of the Call Center. Catch you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.